Hello, my name is Jen McGregor. I was formerly known as Clark, and I have been working in trauma for 2 decades, so a really long career. I don't find it easy because I work with some really critical situations, like critical incidents. This is just where I'm at now. I've worked in so many different areas for so long. But right now, I work with critical incidents. I work with homicide cases, uh, relatives of people that have been tragically murdered. I work with some really nasty things that are going to court, and I work with a lot of rape and sexual violence and violations, as well as domestic abuse. So, day to day, my working profile is working in these really intense situations, and I've done it for so long, and I sometimes question my career choices after having been someone that has grown up in, I call it high impact traumas in my own childhood. It's just really interesting to me, the relationship that we have with ourselves as we really kind of go through this journey of self-discovery. And I think really importantly, where do we stand with trauma today? And I think a really critical tool, something that I use in my work all the time to help people understand themselves and to really give them those red flags for themselves, and to pay really close attention to those superimposing tendencies of trauma that don't just take over mind, emotion, but also body. So I'm going to take you through one of my tools. It's called the emotional window of tolerance. Okay, so it's really about safety. And if you're someone that has grown up with attachment trauma and had trauma in your environment, and you have the symptoms that are closely linked to complex post-traumatic stress disorder, having a relationship to safety, especially for some of the children that I have worked with over the years, they don't have it. They're not safe for themselves. They don't know how to safely attach to other people, and they don't know what safety feels like inside of themselves. And let's look at safety as homeostasis, balance, equilibrium in the brain, and feeling really grounded and connected. Okay, so the opposite to disassociation. You're in life real time and you're able to catch emotion, process emotion, and you're really connected to it. So if you need to feel sad, you will feel sad, happy, mad, bad, all of those things. I always compare it to Inside Out, because I think it's a really useful analogy that as humans we have a whole spectrum of emotion, and it's something that we need to move through and find a way to be able to do that, because then we honour ourselves, and our human experience. So when we have people that have been traumatized, on repetition, the brain becomes hijacked, and so does the body. So people can't really regulate emotion. So there is an up and a down. This up, when people are triggered and they're knocked outside of their emotional window of tolerance, this space looks different for everyone. But if you've been traumatized, you might have very limited capacity to have patience, to be reasonable, and to logically look at a escalated or emotionally charged situation and to be able to comprehend what's going on. You could be in a defense mechanism in a very reactive space with this, which would push you out of your emotional window of tolerance. This is hypervigilance. So these situations are anxiety, and we have fight flight here. Now, this is also quite similar to chronic stress, and I have people that sit in front of me, and this starts from really young, where you can see the tension rattling in the body, and you can hear the anxiety that has trespassed over the mind. And then I'll be looking out for negative automatic thinking, habitual ways of thinking that are really problematic, and people that catastrophize, okay? Because people become risk assessors, and in a situation where there is no experience of safety, they're trying to control situations, and they're like meerkats. They're looking for the next threat, which means, oh, I've met someone, but what if they do this to me? Will they hurt me? Will they harm me? Because they can never really trust that anyone's going to be safe enough for them, as an example. This is a really exhausting space to be in, because you can't really trust yourself here in this space, because the way that I hear this in my clients is, this will happen, that will happen, I'm this, I'm that. And there's lots of self-blame and shame in this space as well. And people do some really dangerous dances with how they interpret themselves. And I think the perception of the self is really fractured when we don't really have the experience of love and safety and attachment. What goes up must come down. So here is hypo-arousal. Now here is freeze. And freeze for me is really difficult to work with as a trauma therapist because it's disassociation, disconnect, numbness. It sometimes mirrors the symptoms of depression where lights are on, no one's home. And this space is burnout. It's like, I can't be bothered anymore. And quite often when I'm working with young people or people that have been victim to like trauma on repetition, they're so exhausted and they just disassociate and just sit. So they're not feeling anything. This is the kind of person that can watch a program. They won't be able to tell you what they've watched because their brain has found a way to shut down, to buffer them out of the situation. Again, it's another way of the brain hijacking itself so it doesn't have to feel the weight of the experience anymore or the exhausting emotional toll of going through pain on repetition. The best space for us as a species, as humans, is to be able to connect to one another safely. I always say to people, this is not a privilege in a relationship. This is such a necessity, especially in terms of the relationship that we have to ourselves. Now, I know how hard that is to get to that space. And if I'm being really honest today, it's still part of my journey to bring myself into these places where I can just feel grounded. And I want to give people tools in terms of how I do that. And that is, you'll see on my channel, walking, connecting to nature. I have always been a really big animal lover. So I get so much joy there. And I have really good people in my life where I can really be myself and I don't have to compromise myself anymore, because I think when you go through lots of therapy and like if you are a therapist, you realize that you can't compromise yourself anymore, because I think that we sit in just constant themes of suffering and we don't need to do that. So I really hope this helps people. The best place for you to be is in safety inside of yourself and work from this space in terms of attaching to other people. And like I say, one of the most important things for me is it is not a compromise, it's a total necessity to us and our human experience.